First step is, can a woman access Jewish texts? Second step is, once she's given the ability to learn, can she be an authority on the text, so much so that she can offer rulings to other people, that people can come to her and ask questions about pots and pans and questions concerning the mikvah or family purity or laws on Shabbat or more intricate life cycle events or issues relating to infertility or things that aren't even so obvious in our text but require a real knowledge and understanding how the Torah system of halacha really works. Now this question actually came to bear in the 16th century in Kurdistan. The Rav, the Rosh Yeshiva of Kurdistan, passed away, and on his deathbed, he announced that his daughter should take over and be the Rosh Beit Midrash, be the head of the yeshiva, the head of the study hall, teaching halakha, teaching law to the yeshiva students. And in fact, her husband, in this letter over here, allowed her to be in this position of teaching the laws of mikveh and Shabbat and tefillah to these yeshiva bacharim, these yeshiva students, which certainly meant that she was elevated to a level of not only knowing the law, but also being in a position of a halachic decisor. So then the next step is, now that we know that she can be knowledgeable and take her knowledge and use it to be in a position of poseket, decisive law, can she be in a position of authoritative leadership? Can she be a leader? Can she be a role model for community? The word in Hebrew is srara. Can she be in a position of srara? So our point of departure over here at the bottom of page 3, source number 11, is this famous idea in Devarim, Som taseh malach hamelech, that you should appoint over yourself a king, right? You should appoint over yourself a king, and when you go into Eretz Israel. And the Rambam, again, Maimonides, Rambam, takes this opportunity to explain that when the Torah says that you should place over yourself a king, he's basing this on the Sifrei, one of the early commentators, says that it's when it says a king, it comes to specifically leave out a queen. You should appoint a king and not a queen over the people. And Maimonides takes us one step further and says what that means is that in all positions of authoritative leadership, not even if it's outside of monarchy, if it's outside of kings and queens, you're still not allowed to appoint a woman in a position of authoritative leadership. Right, in his language, in source number 13, mamidim isha b'malchut shenamar alecha melech v'lo malka. A woman may not be established as a monarch, as it says, you shall set over you a king, but not a queen. Source number 13. Similarly, with regard to all appointments in Israel, in Yisrael, only a man may be appointed to them. So this really is the source for why in many communities women are left out of leadership roles even outside of ritual. So some shuls have a policy that a woman, for example, cannot be a woman cannot be a president of a shul. A president of a shul is a position of power, a position of authority, and therefore, because of this law of Rambam, a woman cannot be a leader in any way. Even more so, therefore, a woman who is a ritual leader, a religious leader in a rabbinic position cannot be a leader of community. Rav Moshe, however, the Igrot Moshe, was asked a question about whether it's possible for women to be in any position of srara. The test case actually, there was a community where the widow needed to get parnasa. She needed to make a living, and her husband, who had passed away, was the mashgicha, was the overseer of the kashrut of the community. And the question came to Rav Moshe is, can the wife take on this leadership role? She certainly had to know halacha, she had to know law, she had to know kashrut up and down. And can she be the mashgiach of the community, which in certain communities was really seen as a leadership and an authoritative position. So Rav Moshe in source number 15 says that that absolutely a woman can take on this role. And even when Rambam was, he says that I'll never understand why Maimonides, why Rambam extended the notion of women not being able to be a malka, being a queen, to all positions of authority, and therefore, of course, she can take on this role. In his style, he does add at the end, but if there's other people who can also do it, if there's other men who can also do it, maybe it's better. Maybe it's better if she doesn't lose too much parnasa, she doesn't lose too much money for a man to fill this role. The question really came to bear when the Jewish state came to bear in 1948. The question is, can a woman be part of the Knesset? Right, so put religious leadership aside for a moment, but can a woman be in a position of leadership and lead community not in a religious sense? Right, given that Israel was being formed, the government was being formed using halacha as the building blocks, using Jewish law as the building blocks, the question really came, can women be part of the Jewish state in terms of taking leadership roles? So the chief rabbi, the Piskei Uziel, was the Sephardi chief rabbi of Israel, 1880 to 1953. So he was asked this question, and in a responsa, he wrote that the problem of a woman being in a position of leadership is only in the context of a Sanhedrin. We're on source number 16, page 5. So in 1939, he was asked this question, and he explained that if there was an appointment made by the Sanhedrin, which of course no longer exists once the temple has been destroyed, then a woman would not be able to function in authoritative position. But if the community accepts her, if she's voted in, if there's a sense that the community needs her and requires her scholarship or her religious leadership or her leadership in general, then she should be accepted as a leader. And Rav Bakshi Daran, also, who was a chief rabbi in Israel, said that there should be no concern of strara. There should be no concern of a woman being an authoritative leader. So then the final question then related to this question of leadership is, what about modesty, right? Nobody said that at the beginning about whether it maybe would be inappropriate for a woman to be in a position of leadership, because perhaps it's immodest for a woman to stand before a mixed crowd, before men and women, and teach Torah. Maybe it's not right for women to be outside in the public space, outside of the home. And of course, this was the way for 1,000 years in Judaism. And the point of departure on page 6, source number 19, the pasuk in Tehillim says, Kol kvuda bat melech pnima. A very strange sentence, very strange pasuk, which is taken to mean the honor of the daughter of the king is within. That it's a strange translation even, but that what this implies is that women should remain internal. They should remain at home. They should remain modest. So the idea and the notion of tsanua, of modesty, became associated with how women look and how women conduct themselves. So Rav Uziel, once again, in 1939, in the same tshuva, in the same responsa, addresses the question about whether it would be inappropriate for men and women to share, to sit in close proximity, is his language, and share the workspace. and whether it's work in holiness or just work in the Knesset, in making law in Israel, is it appropriate for men and women to work side by side together? So in his language, it's common sense that in any serious meeting and meaningful conversation, there's no question of lack of modesty. And sitting in the proximity of women when involved in communal affairs, which is work in holiness, does not lead to licentiousness, to lightheartedness, to modesty. For all Israel, v'kol Yisrael ha'anashim v'hanashim kadoshim heim. And all Israel holy people, and her women are holy and are not suspect of breach of modesty and morality. So at least according to halacha, it seems that women can take the knowledge that they have and use it to teach others, as well as to be in a position of psak, and can also be in a position of srara, of authoritative leadership, and that could be done in a modest, humble way. So at least according to tradition, it seems that there's nothing that would bar a woman from assuming a religious leadership position. So the question really is, what are the facts on the ground? What is actually happening out in the world? There's a concept in the Gemara when the rabbis have an argument and they're not quite sure how to resolve the argument. They say to one another, let's go out and see what the reality is. So the question is, what is the reality on the ground? And this is where I want to now shift a little bit of the conversation to tell you what the reality on the ground is. So I want to do that by way of telling you a little bit about my story and how I got to really have the privilege and honor to be doing what I do. I think my story really begins when I left apartheid South Africa in 1989 with my family. We immigrated to South Florida. And when I was just 12, and my parents sent me a very strong message of tolerance and equality, that all people should be able to be and do whatever they choose and hope. I didn't know that it would translate into being an Orthodox rabbi, but I always had the sense that I could strive and do anything that I wanted. I was always involved in Jewish community. I loved shul. I loved going to shul. I would cross canals literally to get to shul. There was something that drew me to being part of community and to being part of a prayerful community. And so as I grew older, I also grew in my religious commitment, and as well as starting to learn a little bit. But it wasn't really until I went to Barnard that I got an inkling that this was a path for me. My parents insisted that I take a vocational test to see where my skill set was best suited. I guess they didn't want me to float around in college. Not that I was ever such a floater, but they wanted me to have direction. And so I took one of these vocational tests. And of course, the results of the test showed that I was best suited for clergy. And at the time, we all laughed, because what was a good Orthodox girl going to do with that information? And so I put it aside, and I pursued other things in college, although I was always committed to Jewish communal work as well. And I felt myself drawn to Drisha, which is an institute on the west side, which allows women to learn Gemara, Talmud, and halacha, and I needed and wanted the opportunity to hone into my own skills. And when I was finishing learning there after 3 years in what was called the Scholars Circle, I knew Rabbi Avi Weiss from around, and I met with him and asked him if he would hire me full-time at the Hebrew Institute of Riverdale. He didn't bat an eye, but there wasn't a full-time position in the synagogue available for a woman. But he decided to hire me as a congregational intern for just 10 hours a week. And so I started working at the HIR, and I loved it. It was a wonderful fit for me. I loved being part of community, living and breathing synagogue life. And after a year of being there, I remember Rabbi Weiss and I were walking to Tashlich on Rosh Hashanah afternoon to throw away our sins. And I remember at that moment, we both started together to dream about the possibility of being accepted as a full member of the rabbinic staff. Neither of us knew what it would look like or if it was possible, but we knew for certain that I would have to go back to the books and spend a little bit more time learning in order to be accepted and seen as an authority on Jewish law. And so while working at the synagogue, I had a chavrusa, and I continued learning the laws of kashrut and Shabbat, and nida, life cycles, mourning, laws of daily living. And after 5 more years, I completed all the relevant exams that male rabbis take as part of their smicha, as part of getting smicha. I had written tests, I had oral tests. And once again, Rabbi Weiss and I found ourselves on a walk, and I said, I'm finished all of my exams. And I could continue operating in the shul as I've been doing in my position, or we can let other women know that this is a viable path, a viable career path for them to follow. And so we decided to hold what we called a conferral ceremony, where it was a public ordination ceremony where we invited people to my public ordination, where I was given a certification by Rabbi Weiss and Rabbi Daniel Sperber in Israel. And at that event, people came over to me and said, how can I do what you're doing? How can I follow this path? And so Rabbi Weiss and I decided to take out an ad in the Jewish Week, announcing the opening of Yeshivat Maharat, the first Orthodox institution to train and ordain Orthodox women as spiritual and halachic leaders. And to our surprise, we received 35 applications in that first year, which let us know that the community, there was a segment of the community that was thirsting and ready to learn Torah and be able to teach it to others. And so we opened our doors in 2009 with 3 students. And 4 years later, we're now graduating our first class of Yeshivat Maharat students who are all invited June 16th, it's just around the corner, where we'll have our first ordination, where these 3 women are going to get their certification, their ordination certificate, and they will be placed in mainstream Orthodox synagogues. In fact, one of our students, Rachel, has just been hired by one of the largest Mechitza Orthodox traditional shuls in North America, in Montreal, called Shar Shamayim, as a assistant rabbi, and the other 2 students are very close to securing jobs either in DC, in Chicago, in St. Louis, and so it's very exciting to see that after years of traveling to communities, much like I'm doing here, and presenting the opportunity that women can be in positions of religious leadership. And now, 4 years later, we're seeing that communities are thirsting for a new kind of spiritual and religious leadership, a leadership which gives people options. What's amazing about my students is that women are not looking to usurp authority from men. They're not looking to change the halachic system, but they're looking to serve and teach Torah. They're looking to serve side by side with men to help shape the community alongside. There was a New Yorker cartoon in 2000 that I remembered clipping out. And this was when I was at the very beginning of my journey. And it's a picture, it's a cartoon of two I guess priests in a very austere-looking cathedral in a Catholic church, and they're walking, and the line at the bottom says, "It seems to me that the ordination of women might brighten this place up a little bit," and I loved it because what that New Yorker is really saying is that women are looking not to knock down the existing infrastructure, not to build something entirely new and different, but are looking for a place and a space to operate within the framework of halacha. And to that end, and then I'll pause for questions and comments, to that end, what we're trying to do is create Orthodox leaders, Orthodox women, who have the ability to lead community, but there are distinctions. There are distinctions within halacha. And therefore, there are a few things that Orthodox women in a role of rabbi cannot do. I call them the red lines. And the red lines are that Orthodox women can still not lead certain parts of services. Women can not form a minyan, form a quorum. And women do not sit on a beit din, do not sit on a court of judges overseeing certain life cycle events like conversions. But on a day-to-day basis, there's so much that a woman can do. And when I think about my own job, if I'm waking up in the morning and officiating at a brit or a baby naming, and then sitting with a couple, counseling them or helping them navigate a particular issue, and then teaching a class or preparing a sermon to give on Shabbat, what am I if I'm not a rabbi? So I describe the role and the function as a rabbi, although the title is Rabbah to display that there are a few distinctions, and we're trying really very carefully to operate within the system of halacha, to really push it out a little bit and to make space for women to be able to serve and lead the Jewish people. So I'll pause there and take some questions, comments, and thoughts.